All right, folks. Hello, this is Mike, and this is episode 2 of the Guillotine. Let me just get a couple things out of the way first. My voice is a little off right now. Brief explanation of that. Whereas most people, they get into acting and have a trade or a legitimate career to fall back on. In my case, I was working in a legitimate career, and now I'm falling back on acting. I haven't done it in a few years, so I'm not going to plug it because I don't have sponsors for this podcast, and I don't want to. But I'm doing some live acting right now, and I had one live acting performance this past weekend, and it entails me playing a demonic butcher. So it did end up causing me to lose my voice for a couple days after, and now it's just back, so it might still be a little scratchy sounding, and that would be why. So I've got this on the scroller for ground news. I don't want to necessarily just rely on ground news. Again, they are not a sponsor, but it is a good place to find aggregated news on a particular subject. So in this case, I want to point out too that the first episode of the Guillotine, when I covered the assassination of Charlie Kirk, was not my original intention. My original intention was to do censorship for this, but things have been happening so quickly in the news cycle that I felt I had to do that sooner rather than later. And again, I'm going to actually put together a couple of ideas that I wanted to discuss in this one episode, and also look at some feedback from a viewer on the first episode that had some criticisms, and I'll go over all that shortly. If you did just hear a sound that sounded like a cash register, that's because I am selling my 40 years worth of collectibles collection online, which is what helps fund the making of this podcast. So that was my eBay notification that I just sold another set of comics for my collection. Now, if you know me, or you know my work, you know my history, then you know all this stuff already. You know about what I do, you know about my acting work, and work in entertainment and comics and publishing. And if not, that's fine. If this is how you're first discovering my work, that's also great. And I will leave it to you to search. I'm not here to do a self-promotion by any means. So what I want to talk about first is censorship. And everyone's talking about the censorship of Kimmel and Colbert in the U.S. right now, directed by the president. And Kimmel's back on again. That's something that I probably would have covered and been behind on the news by the time it came out. But in this case, I also want to talk about censorship happening right here in Canada, where I am, and that was recently libraries in Alberta removing books that were deemed inappropriate for particular age levels. And of course, it just so happens that the books that they happen to find inappropriate for certain age levels are things like 1984 and Fahrenheit 451 and A Handmaid's Tale, of all things. I mean, half of these, and I mean, a lot of this is regarding public school libraries. But I mean, a lot of these kids are watching the TV show Handmaid's Tale with their parents at home, and the idea that this is somehow going to negatively impact them, or, I mean, good Lord, if the kid's at that reading level that they can read Margaret Atwood, you should encourage that, not take it out of the library. So in this case, here's an example. This is from July 29th. That's the first one that I see. But clearly, books aren't the threat, censorship is. That title explains it pretty succinctly. That's from the Edmonton Journal. They lean right, so that's actually surprising. Of course, a million friggin' pop-ups, as is the case in modern internet. You can't browse anywhere without friggin' cookies pulling up stuff. So again, that was also shared by the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. And and full articles are available there. So without plugging anyone in particular, and let's see if we're even able to read the full article. I'm not going to read the whole thing. You see the links, you see the name of the paper, you can Google that. It's real easy, or use a different search engine. I personally actually prefer Ecosia. It's exactly like Google, except they plant trees with their ad revenue. So if you're environmentally minded and you like the idea of the ad revenue for the ads you see on your search engine going to help plant trees, then that's a great option for a search engine. Again, not a sponsor, so I won't dwell on it. But suffice it to say, it's super concerning. I will read this paragraph here, or these two opening paragraphs. Alberta's Minister of Education and Childcare recently issued an order banning some books from all school libraries in the province. The basis of this book ban is to restrict explicit sexual content, which is subjectively defined. Notice that word subjectively. It's very subjective. This means that from September onwards, classics such as George Orwell's 1984 and Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale will be banned from all school libraries for all students ages 6 to 18. And I'm sorry, but if you're going to tell me that a 15-year and older cannot read The Handmaid's Tale or 1984 because it's sexually explicit and not appropriate for their age group, that's insane. If you've read those books, you know they're nowhere. In fact, there's plenty of young reader, teen, and juvenile themed books that have more explicit sexual content than those books. I don't recall there ever being graphic detail in 1984. Yes, there is a relationship that one of the main characters has, but a lot of that is glossed over. The sexual part of their relationship is very glossed over. You got to remember that book was written in like the 20s or 30s. I mean, we can search it if you want, but again, I'm not going to do all the work for you. If you're someone who's concerned about the details I'm giving, you're welcome to verify or not verify them on your own on any search engine. When was written? So 1949. So do you think a mainstream book published by a legitimate publishing company in 1949 about a dystopian future is going to contain graphic sexual content? It's not likely. I mean, when it comes to that type of content, things were much more restricted now. Now, we like to think that things were heavily censored then and much less now, and I don't actually think that's true. I think we've changed what we censor. And at that time, there's no way. There's no way. Again, it's been a little bit since I've read 1984, but not that long. And I mean, again, Handmaid's Tale, yes, there are depictions of rape. Guess what? I think people should really know what rape is and what it's about. And I don't think that, maybe a 6-year-old that's too young, sure. But how many 6-year-olds do you think are signing out 1984 or Handmaid's Tale? Like, there's no 6-year-olds even looking in that section of the library. They're signing out The Hungry Caterpillar and Dr. Seuss. Like, it's just asinine. It's absolutely asinine. And as it says, books are not the problem. The idea that you need to ban books, it's so backward. It's so primitive. So out of touch with reality. And to finish that paragraph, this also likely means that many valuable sexual health education books that do not meet the government's definition of non-sexual content will be banned. So furthermore, some people don't want sex education in school. It makes me wonder, so are they teaching it at home? And how are they teaching it? But secondly, what is the deal? Like, people act like if their kids get sex ed in school that they're like sitting them down and making them watch porn. And like, trust me, I did sex ed in school. That is not what it's like. If anything, it will scare you into not having sex as soon. We had to watch a video of a birth, and yeah, that was eye-opening. And you can joke and you can say, oh, it was, it traumatized you, but it's still better to have that experience, to have actually seen and learned that. And we say it's traumatizing facetiously, and sure, it's something that stays with you and, jokingly scars your mind, but sometimes that stuff has to happen. Sometimes that's how you learn. Sometimes that's how things stick in your head. And there's no reason to have so much backlash. And I'm veering off. That's not even censorship. That's just really, really strange repression of sexuality that some people believe in, and I don't get it. But yeah, the censorship of books in Canada, in Alberta. It's just so silly. Now, I have seen comments, and again, I'm not perfect. I'm not going to get every quote and every statement absolutely correct. And that's why I say you're welcome to verify and correct me in the comments or wherever you like, and we'll actually look at that in a minute. But it's ridiculous, and it makes me embarrassed for Canada. It makes me embarrassed for my country. And it makes me worried that the sickness and the divisiveness of the United States has leaked over into Canadian society. And I think if you don't live here, you don't realize how much American culture influences Canadian culture. And it's impossible to avoid because most of our television, most of our entertainment media comes from the United States. So you get many of us don't follow or support Canadian content or even look for it. So you have, at least for the last couple generations, a population that's been influenced by the propaganda and media of a neighboring country that is much more aggressive and much more militaristic than our country. And I think that is bringing to bear, I think decades of not doing something to keep that in check have now given us a current population that is more invested in American politics than Canadian politics, even though we don't live there. I think we argue more about American politics than our own politics. And that's why you see people like Polyev and the Conservative Party here going very, MAGA north, so to speak, and getting support. Thank God he didn't win the last election, and thank God they don't have the support that, Trump's Republicans do in the U.S. And I try very hard to keep my coverage nonpartisan. And I don't think Republicans in and of themselves in the United States are bad people. I think there are good people there. I think the MAGA movement under the direction of Trump is a domestic terror organization with access to the largest military in the world, and that should frighten everyone. And I think if people weren't so afraid and actually did more digging and did their jobs, by now they would have him and his cronies up on charges for you'll have to forgive me, the words are escaping me, I haven't had enough coffee yet this morning. Charges for I want to say mutiny, but that's not what I mean. Like, they're traitors. What am I trying to say here? I swear. What? Oh, wait. Misspelled. Der. Anyway, traitors to their own country. And I can't think of the word right now, and it's so crazy because I know words. I'm a writer, but this happens, especially when you're working live. If I wasn't working live, I would have just, found a dictionary or an encyclopedia or whatever. Anyway, and carrying on with the subject of censorship, I think YouTube is another long time offender who's gotten away with it for far too long. Now, I'm a premium YouTube subscriber like you see here. So that means I don't get ads on my videos unless they're already part of the video. And that's because I hate advertising. That's why I don't have sponsors for this. I hate it. I think we're being sold a million things a day from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep. There's on our phones, on our devices, on our TV. And I think it's gotten carried away. Too much commercialism, too much advertising everywhere. But with YouTube, the YouTubers can't say specific words. If they do, they risk being demonetized, so they have to use different words. And I think they've, a lot of very big YouTube stars, I guess, for lack of a better term, have stopped using those fake words and instead are just bleeping themselves, which I still think is totally and wholly unnecessary. You can't use the word rape on YouTube. You have to say SA, because sexual assault might even be too much, because they're worried that it's going to trigger people. And here's the thing. If you've been raped or sexually assaulted, and it is something that, obviously it's a traumatic experience, if you know that simply hearing the word is going to trigger you and it's going to affect you and you're going to spiral, that's your responsibility. And you know what you're watching. Every title of a video on YouTube is generally overly descriptive. It tells you what's going to be in it. And in that case, don't watch something that's relating to sexual assault or rape, instead of censoring the people on it and demonetizing them and taking away their ability to actually make a living. That's my biggest gripe, and it's one of those things where every month when my subscription renews, I really do have that mental conversation with myself where I'm like, am I going to keep paying for this? Because I really don't like that. Most of the YouTubers that I watch are censored, and I'm paying for censored content, and I really don't like that. And I really think that it's an overstep on the part of YouTube. I don't think they should do it. That's why I don't censor my YouTube channels. I don't care. I won't monetize them. If the result of using plain language and communicating real issues is to be demonetized, I don't want to monetize it then. So things like suicide, they can't say suicide. They say things like unalived. They can't say, killed themselves. They unalived themselves, or they deleted themselves. Again, the only thing that this does is make that new term synonymous with the original word it was censoring, to the point where eventually it becomes adopted by the populace, especially the younger generation that's coming up learning this stuff and watching it. And eventually, those terms are going to be considered offensive, and those are going to have to be censored. It doesn't help. The way that they are censoring content does not help. And it seems crazy to me that it's gone on this long. It seems crazy to me that YouTubers, the real big name YouTubers, the people who get views, the people who have clout, the people who are getting media attention outside of YouTube, don't band together and say, we don't want to do this. We're not doing this. This is dumb. And if they all threaten to pull their content and go to another platform, I think YouTube would rethink their policy on censorship and demonetization. That's what I see. Whether that's ever going to happen, who knows? Check out. You can see who I follow here. I have nothing to hide. And a lot of them are, people who really have a large YouTube presence, that people who have thousands or millions of subscribers that get millions of views on their videos. That gives them power. The platform doesn't create a damn thing. It's the content creators that create the content, and the platform makes its money off that. And even the successful ones, if they took a minute to realize how much money YouTube was making off of them, and at the same time pressing them under their thumb of restrictions, I think they would band together. I think they would pull their content or stand up and say, listen, as a collective group, we don't agree with this, and it's an extra hassle in our content creation, and it's bullshit, because it is. It's so silly. It's so silly that they're treating every viewer as if they're a 5-year-old. And again, 5-year-olds aren't watching YouTubers like Call Me Chris or Oompaville or The Daily Show. Like it's not on their radar intellectually, emotionally. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if YouTube's algorithm even suggests those videos to those kids, because you know what they're going to say? They're going to say, why would I want to watch that? So who are they protecting? They're protecting imaginary people who they think might be triggered by a particular word. And I think it's an overabundance of caution, and I think it's just plain silly. It's immature, and that is part of the problem. Is we've got a generation of people who never grew up because we were told, don't grow up, be a kid forever, live your dreams, and all that. And no one stopped to think, what does that mean? And why do we want people to act like children forever? And they pass it off like, so that you'll be happy and that you'll reach your goals. And I think there's a segment who also secretly encourages that, because it's easier to control children and keep them from questioning things than it is adults. So, since we're on YouTube now, I'm going to... Oh, wait, that's not what I wanted. I am going to my videos. That's what I wanted. And in particular, we're going to go to the Guillotine episode 1 about Charlie Kirk. And I'm going to go to the actual video. And I'm going to pause this. You guys don't need to hear my voice over everything. Zone Rogue said, interesting title. Thank you. I don't know if that's meant to be a criticism or a compliment or neither. Or maybe it's neutral. I don't know. But right now I'm going to say, thank you. Because I appreciate their comment regardless, either way. Now, Meg F142857. Their comment was, am I the one who liked that? Anyway. Nope, you can't really talk about Charlie Kirk if you don't take the time to actually listen to what he really said versus just take some out of context quotes. That seems to be clearly the only way you are getting your information. Can tell that right at 1 minute 25 seconds into your commentary about the black pilot, and I'm going to come back to that. So that tells me not worth listening to, because you have a warped perspective right from the get-go and are not spitting the facts you claim. Goodbye, thumbs down. You are just blathering propaganda jumping on this trend. Okay. So, I appreciate Meg F142857 making that comment. I am definitely open to discussing anything or receiving criticism. I am not trying to push one thing or the other. It just seems like an issue that clearly needed to be laid out, and that I wanted to discuss with anyone who's watching this or watching my videos. I did say, okay, please link me to an example that corrects my misunderstanding. Now, I do want to go back. I did watch the video clip where Charlie Kirk said, when he was talking about a black pilot. I may have slightly misquoted or not covered in detail enough in the previous video what he said. What I said in the video was he didn't want to fly in a plane with a black pilot. What was said in the video, a more direct quote, was that if he was flying on a plane somewhere and he found out or was told that the pilot was black, it would make him nervous, and it would make him think about possibly canceling and getting a different flight, or just in general give him anxiety. He would be nervous because he doesn't trust that a black pilot is as well trained or deserves their job as much as a white pilot, and that they might have been hired simply because they were black and not because of their skill or experience. So that's what he said. I'm not going to fight the words of someone who is no longer with us, and I'm not going to use that as an excuse that that was okay, that he should have, been killed the way he was. I don't believe that at all. I don't agree with that. I don't encourage it. And I'm not going to fight the right or left, because let me tell you folks, the reason I try not to push one side or the other too much is because I think they're both full of shit and they're both corrupt. I think you have extreme people on the left who twist and distort facts to try and get one over on the people on the right, and I think there's people on the extreme right who do the exact same thing. And I think you get these two childish extremes from both sides that fight with each other, and that's what causes all this tension and social bickering and nonsense that you see online. People who don't have anything better to do. Now, Meg FF 142857 is a YouTuber, a fellow YouTuber, and again, she's more of a YouTuber than I am, because as I've said before, I consider myself a YouTuber like someone who pulls their own tooth out is a dentist. Like, she has a website, lifeloveandhorses.com, and if you're thinking I'm about to say something negative or try and put down her content, not at all. She appears to be an expert in horse training. She posts videos about horse training and just the horse culture, lifestyle, if you will. I don't know how you want to call it. I don't want to be offensive, and I don't know if saying it's rodeo themed would be disingenuous. But I did actually leave a comment on one of her videos. I don't know if this was, I think it was. In any event, I did leave a comment saying that she actually has some very thoughtful content that I appreciate, and I appreciate that she promotes positive reinforcement as opposed to negative reinforcement for animal training. And I think that's great, and I think she's a very knowledgeable and experienced horse trainer, and I gave her some very positive feedback about her YouTube channel. And if you're into horses, you might learn something. If you're someone who is starting to train horses, wants to train horses, learn to train horses, listen, I don't care that she doesn't agree with me about Charlie Kirk. That doesn't make her my enemy. I'm not going to badmouth her. Listen, we all have different areas of expertise, and I don't claim to be an expert of American politics. But it is something that we're exposed to every day in our own media, and that's why I think it's a valid subject that we need to discuss, we need to talk about. And let me tell you, things in Canada have been real tense with Trump as a president because of, him talking about wanting to take us over, and then the ambassador to the United States in Canada, saying that our national pride is offensive and our resistance to the idea of being taken over is offensive, and the idea that we want to strengthen our own country, and because of Trump's tariffs, looking to buy and support Canadian-made products and Canadian businesses, that we are somehow offending the United States. It's just absolutely silly. Now, I'm going to go back to Ecosia. I'm going to cover the other subject that I wanted to talk about today. And, I do apologize if this seems really fast. I have a busy life. I'm doing a lot of stuff. I really, really, really tried to get out of entertainment and media. I really did. I was working another job that was, private career, and I ended up getting harassed and bullied out of that job. And so, like I said, whereas most people have a legitimate career to fall back on when they get into entertainment, I do the opposite, or my life works the opposite way. I fall back on acting and writing and art and entertainment. Somehow that's my fallback career as opposed to the other way around. Wasn't planned that way, but it just seems like, I was getting a lot of heat, and that's why I quit doing it. I was being harassed and stalked online, and those of you who are inclined to research me and look into my past, I've been very public about all of that, and you can find that out, and you can see what I'm talking about. But We don't need to cover that right now. What we need to do is cover Trump sending National Guard to Oregon. So, Portland. Yes. So, this is the biggest thing. And again, you can look this up. You can search for videos on YouTube. You can go to Reddit. You can go to Ecosia, Google, Ground News, whatever. And here is what if we find the specific quote, I don't know if we will, but so Trump has said that he's going to deploy the National Guard to Portland, of all places, the next city that they're going to clean up and take over. He says Portland is war-torn, and saying that it's you know, here's a centrist WGN9 news coverage saying that democratic cities are overrun with lawlessness, and meanwhile Portland and people in Portland are posting photos and videos on social media about how calm and not war-torn their city is. And the governor of Oregon has actually said that they will be prepared to sue the White House if the National Guard lands troops in Portland. And the quote from Trump recently was, when someone disputed that fact, when someone said, listen, we don't need the National Guard here, everything's fine, we're not a war zone, Trump commented, what do you mean? Do you mean to tell me that what I'm seeing on TV is not what's actually happening in real life? And I think that definitely speaks towards some lack of mental faculty. I'm not saying that that's always been the case, but it seems to me that if he does have a touch of senility or dementia, that this is a sign that is worsening. And of all the aides and advisors and people around him, they're such stooges that no one will speak up. They're all too afraid. It only would take one person to say, sir, I think you've misunderstood. And there's even been speculation, and I think it's probably right, and I think it's probably close to what happened, that recently Fox News did a segment about Portland, and they recapped the protests and the riots that were going on in 2020 when police forces did have to come in, and when there were encampments and large protests going on. And the speculation is that Trump watched that segment and misunderstood that when they were talking about the events of 2020, that was something that was happening now. And you would think, his fucking minister of war or whatever they want to call themselves, like Hegseth, the Fox News anchor, and that's his only freaking qualifications. You think he would say, no, you've misunderstood the situation. Instead, they go along with everything he says. And it's crazy. It really is. And it's another example that he's trying to create a system where he's like the king of America. And of all countries, America is supposed to be the most anti-king country in the world. They were founded to break away from monarchy, to break away from kings and queens, to govern themselves. And it amazes me that there's still such a large base supporting him and marching right towards this idea of dictatorship, of rule, of family lineage, and of behavior and customs as if he were a king. It's so strange. I don't understand how the Republicans who claim that they love the country, want to save it, want to fix it, are also willing to embrace the idea of one man sitting in a room dictating orders that everyone follows, which is, I believe, the antithesis of the spirit of the formation of America itself. It's so strange. And listen, I get it. Everyone gets fooled sometimes. And I think there's way more grace in someone who's from the right who says, listen, we did support him. We thought he was good for us, but we can see now that we got the wool pulled over our eyes. And get him out. That doesn't mean change political parties. It doesn't mean become a Democrat. It just means, hey guys, the emperor has no clothes. He pulled the wool over our eyes, and we need to course correct immediately. And it's impossible to talk about this stuff and to voice an opinion without sounding like I'm a far left extremist or I'm a hardcore liberal. Listen, Chris Rock had a really great bit where he said, I'm liberal about some things and I'm conservative about other things. And I think that is the most sane approach to life. I think you can't make any one political party your identity. And at the end of the day, it's because those politicians on both sides have more in common with each other than they do with you. At the end of the day, they're going to make deals that are beneficial for both of them. They're going to make deals behind closed doors that compromise in a way that benefit them. I think we've lost a generation of politicians who actually put their constituents and the public first. There's a few that stand out, and yeah, they stand out on the left. I'm sorry, that's just how it is. If you show me a Republican who is looking to actually protect the little guy, to stand up to corporate greed, to stand up to fascism, to stand up to inequality, I'll be the first one to acknowledge, hey, that guy's got a good message. But it seems to be lacking on the right. I invite you to send me links. Show me Republican politicians, or in the case of Canada, conservative politicians. You know what? I've never been a big fan of Doug Ford, but I don't mind some of the stuff he's doing now. I like that he has stood up to Trump. I like that he's promoting Canada First. I like that he's willing to work with our Prime Minister, even though they're from different political parties, because that's what mature adults in that situation should be doing. This petty bickering, it makes sense on the internet. It doesn't make sense in real life in a political setting. It doesn't. All it shows is that those people never should have been given the position or voted in the position that they're in. And that goes for both sides. If all you can do is petty bickering, you're not helping people who voted you in. You're not doing anything to make the country better. You're not doing anything to make life better for those who voted you in to do that. So that's my opinion anyway. So again, the idea that the farmers markets in Portland are going to be overrun with National Guard soldiers. For what? For nothing. For the fact that Fox News discussed a riot that happened 5 years ago. Seems crazy to me. But again, just like Meg F142857, you're welcome to comment. You're welcome to call me out. You're welcome to send me contradictory evidence. I'm totally open for that. If I've said something that is so out of line and out of context and veered from reality, I will be the first to admit it. If you can present me some evidence, I will do that. I believe in freedom of speech, which is something that we don't actually have as part of our constitution in Canada. It's actually more difficult to express an unpopular opinion depending on the subject matter here than it is in the United States. We have protected speech, and we also have laws for hate speech, so that there's a line. Our protected speech and our freedom of speech has a line that, if crossed, we can be charged criminally. And I'm not even saying that that's not how it should be. I often wonder if maybe there should be a couple of guardrails relating to freedom of speech in the United States, but I know you guys hold that very close to your hearts, just like the guns, which is also an issue too, but it's not the issue that I'm going to talk about today. Although I could. In the last week, you guys have had 6 mass shootings, like, but that will be the subject of another episode. And speaking of another episode, I am working on getting into a regular schedule for this podcast. It will not be until November, though. As of, throughout October into early November, I'm still busy with that acting gig, which may or may not affect my voice, which affects my ability to do this. And I will be doing some additional voice work coming up. So again, it's just not a good time. I know. I started a podcast at a time where the only thing I definitely need to do, which is my voice, is not a stable commodity right now. So there will be more episodes and a more regular schedule starting in November. But for now, irregular schedule. I appreciate you taking the time to listen, and I hope you have a great day. And I look forward to seeing your comments, and I wish you the best wherever you are out there. We're all in this together, and I hope that we can find a way to get through this together and have us all in a better place on the other side of it. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.